Alrighty, well now we come to the first big sequel of the comic book boom of the 2000s. X2 X-Men United. And surprisingly, this one holds up as well. Not just as a sequel to the first X-Men movie, but as as a really great comic book movie in its own right. In fact, if I was not thinking too hard, actually no, I'm not even going to say if I wasn't thinking too hard because this movie is probably my favorite movie to ever come out of a Marvel comic book series. To this day, it remains my favorite Marvel comic movie, and I know it's not produced by Marvel, or it's not the X-Men are not necessarily owned by Marvel Studios. They're owned by Fox, but even so, they're based on the Marvel comic strip. So yeah, I'm considering them a Marvel movie. And as a Marvel movie, I think it's right up there with the best, if not the best. So, the plot this time around is following the events of the first movie. There comes an assassination attempt on the President of the United States by an unknown mutant assailant. And as a result, the President lets off the leash an anti-mutant colonel named William Stryker. And basically what Stryker intends to do is, supposedly, what he tells the President he intends to do is to strike against Xavier's School for the Gifted, detain and question several of the mutants to see if they know anything about the assassination. Although he has his own ulterior motives, namely having to do with Cerebro and quite possibly wiping out the entirety of the mutant race. So the X-Men and Magneto are forced to work together to stop what could be a threat to their entire race as they know it. So right off the bat, I want to tell you that nearly everything about this movie surpasses the first. The acting is better, the action scenes are better, the effects are better, the story is better, the writing is better, the cinematography is better, the pacing is better. Nearly everything about this movie is better than the first one, and I was shocked to find that out because, like I said, this was still in the early stages of the comic book movie renaissance of the 2000s. This was in 2003. So again, you didn't really. This is one of the reasons why I wasn't really too shocked that The Dark Knight turned out to be more well received than Batman Begins. And this is one of the because I've seen sequels surpass the original before, and in my opinion, this surpasses the original X-Men. And again, I liked the original X-Men, but to me, this is just so much better. The acting, like I said, is better this time around. Hugh Jackman still remains the perfect Wolverine. We get to explore his past a lot more. He's more intense this time around. Jackman, I actually think, bulked up a bit more for this than he did in the first one, which makes it all the more beneficial to the character. And the fact that he has juicier material to work with this time around really helps his performance, in my opinion. Also better are Halle Berry and Famke Janssen as Storm and Jean Grey. Again, they have better material to work with because they are potentially facing the genocide of their entire race. So not only do they have a better script to work with this time around, but also they just fit more comfortably into their characters, and that's the case for a lot of other returning actors from the first one. Is that they seem a lot more comfortable with their characters this time around. I am kind of distressed that Cyclops gets sidelined, but honestly, I found it to be a small price to pay. I mean, if Cyclops is not in an X-Men movie, I'm not going to cry. Again, I like James Marsden as Cyclops, but in all honesty, if they tried to cram him in, then I think it would have been pushing it a little too much with the multitude of characters, and we already have enough characters here. Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart, much like the rest of the cast, are even better this time around. Their chemistry still sizzles with each other. They have more scenes together this time, and like I said, they're much like Jackman. They're more intense. They have more to work with, and one of the biggest advantages that this movie has is that a lot of the concepts, and a lot of this world was already established in the first movie. So with everything set up, we can really get the ball moving this time around. Now, that is not to say that someone who has not seen the first X-Men movie cannot enjoy this one too, because they do a decent job of catching you up. They do a good job of filling you in just enough to where, okay, these are the characters, these are what their deals are, etc., etc. So, what new to this? Well, I also have to give props to Rebecca Romijn. Now, whether or not you like her as Mystique, you have to admit that she's better in this than she was in the first one. And not that she was bad in the first one, but like a lot of members of Magneto's Brotherhood, she didn't really have much of a personality, which is remedied here, particularly in her interactions with a lot of the characters, and that's what really makes this movie work. Or that's one of a few significant things that really makes this movie work as well as it does. Is that you really get to see a lot of these characters interact with each other in ways that you didn't necessarily get to see before in the first movie. I mean, you get to see Mystique interact with Wolverine in ways that she didn't get to before. You get to see you get to see Xavier and Magneto talk with each other in a way that you didn't get to see before in the first movie. You get to see Wolverine really take charge as a member of the X-Men and as this guardian to a few of the X-Men students, like Anna Paquin and Shawn Ashmore, etc., etc. Both of whom are also better here this time around than they were in the first movie. And them more so than other characters, they seem more confident in their roles. Maybe because they were younger than everyone else in the first one. They were essentially the novices of the group. Again, Anna Paquin was no novice actress at the time of. She was by no means a neophyte when it came to acting in the first one, but again, she and Shawn Ashmore were just kind of getting introduced to this world, as were a lot of the other people. But it's a big universe to get swept up in at such a young age. But again, she and Ashmore benefit from the fact that yes, they have already been introduced to this world, and now they can actually act more like people. They act more like regular people here, since they are now firmly established. Well, what new does this movie bring to the table? Well, once again, they perfectly cast a member of the comics, or a member of the team from the comics. Nightcrawler's in this movie. In fact, Nightcrawler is one of the best parts of this movie. He's the best new character that they introduce, and he is played by Alan Cumming. Alan Cumming is Nightcrawler. My God, is he the perfect choice? I might get disagreements on that, but really, Alan Cumming really captures the naivety of the character of Nightcrawler in regards to the overall conflict, but also what he really gets across very well is the unending faith of Nightcrawler, and the fact that they threw Nightcrawler in here when when a lot of the X-Men are starting to lose faith and lines are being drawn in the sand and first blood is being drawn, it really helps to have someone pure, spiritually pure like Nightcrawler around to help balance things out, to help certain members of the team get through some difficult emotional issues. And when he says the prayer at the end, when I don't really think I'm spoiling too much here, when Jean Grey dies and he says the prayer at the end, it felt appropriate. It didn't really feel shoehorned in. And they don't force religion into this movie. They just happen to have a very religious character in this movie, and the fact that they have this very religious character in this fantastical world really helps lend a lot of believability to what they've set up here. So Brian Cox is also new to the franchise. He plays Colonel William Stryker. I'm aware that they changed Stryker from a reverend in the comics to a colonel in the movie, but honestly, if they made him just this fanatical reverend who was going after the X-Men, I don't really think he would have been as much of a physical threat as a colonel would be. I mean, a colonel has a lot of military influence and military resources. So yeah, I didn't mind the change of Stryker from reverend to a colonel, and this could have easily been just this standard run-of-the-mill prejudiced, like, oh, I hate mutants, so I have to kill them all. No, they actually lend a lot of some very believable depth to this character, in that he has a very tragic backstory and some very tragic past experiences with mutants, in that his son was a mutant, and it ultimately, not only could he never really get over the fact that his son was a mutant, but also his son was resentful, and it eventually escalated to the point where his wife committed suicide. So already you have this very fantastic backstory, but they don't really preach it to you. You don't really feel like this character is using it as a crutch. You feel, and it's very subtly played by Cox. I mean, the way Cox plays the character of William Stryker in this, you feel like he it's like he feels that it's his responsibility. It's like he feels, I mean, of course he's misguided in his attempts at purifying humanity of the mutant problem, but of course he has personal reasons for doing so, and those personal reasons, which are played subtly but not to the point where you completely forget about them by Brian Cox, really helps elevate him as a villain. I really liked William Stryker in this, and again, in terms of his military influence and how far he was willing to go, all of that made him a very appropriate and very effective villain for the movie. I mean, yeah, he may not be able to take a lot of the X-Men in a physical fight, but he doesn't really have to. I mean, just his ambition and just his resources are enough of a threat to where yeah, you can believe that the X-Men and Magneto would feel the need to work together to stop him. So, what else? Kelly Hu as Lady Deathstrike. Now, Lady Deathstrike, I'm not going to lie, has absolutely no personality in this. She is essentially Stryker's henchwoman, but again, much like Cyclops, I felt it was a small price to pay. If they tried to incorporate Lady Deathstrike's backstory from the comics into this movie, then I think it would have felt too cluttered. I think it would have felt a little bit out of place. They needed someone for Wolverine to fight, and I guess they couldn't use Sabretooth again, so they went to Lady Deathstrike. And the fact that her procedure to have her skeleton infused with adamantium, to have her procedure be essentially the exact same as Wolverine's procedure, really makes her hit a lot closer to home than Sabretooth did in the first movie, because in this movie we are dealing with Wolverine's backstory, and having Deathstrike there and having her essentially be a carbon copy of Wolverine, at least in terms of what she can do, felt appropriate. Again, I can easily see some fans of the comics getting pissed off that, like, why didn't she say anything? Why don't they incorporate her backstory? Why isn't she a robot like she was in the comics? But again, I'm one of those people who, if it suits the movie, or if it suits the story that the creators want to tell, then I'm someone who can generally forgive some inconsistencies with the comics. That being said, we do get a much better movie this time around in terms of the overall finished product, because they managed to convey that feeling of raising the stakes and really, like I said, first blood being drawn. But at the same time, it never really loses that very methodical, the very methodical, precise form of storytelling that the first movie used. This by no means is this very explosive action movie. It's very much a character-driven story with a little bit of action in it. Now, I can easily see some people not really gravitating towards that. I've heard, in fact, my brother and some other people I've met say that they don't really like the early X-Men movies because they find them boring. Now, I will admit there's not really as much action to them as something like the Spider-Man movies. But if the characters are interesting enough and the scenes can carry themselves well enough, then I don't really mind a shortage of action, because just little touches to the scenes that they make really help you. The movie does not let you forget that you are watching a movie about mutants, whether it be the dialogue and some of the social commentary that's going on, or whether it be something little like Iceman, Sean Ashmore's character, touching his mother's hot cup of tea and all of a sudden instantaneously turning it into an ice block of tea. Just little touches like that really help not only help cement the fact that, yes, you are watching an X-Men movie, but the way that the scenes carry themselves and the way that the multitude of characters interact with each other, and the way that these characters are written with such care, and the way the story is told with such this albeit slower than most pace, then it really gives the whole thing a lot of gravity, in my opinion. So, if you haven't guessed by now, I really love this movie. I've loved it for years. I've seen it many times, and I probably will continue to see it many times in the future. In my opinion, it remains the best of the X-Men franchise. I'm just going to get that out of the way. This is still my favorite, and it can join the happy pantheon of sequels that surpass the original. Now, if you like the first movie better than this one, then more power to you. But again, all I can really do is give my opinion and give my stance. And in my opinion, the writing, the improved writing, the more confident acting, the more confident directing by Bryan Singer, the better sense of storytelling, the slightly improved emphasis on subtlety. This movie is not quite as action-packed as, or this movie does not actually contain as much action on average as the first movie, I don't think. But again, I think the story and the characters are strong enough to where you don't really mind. So, again, that's about all I got. And next one is, unfortunately, X-Men 3. But, hey, at least we have X-Men 2.